Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Lifeonaire Show. I'm your host, Jason Rojo. On the Lifeonaire Show, we help you make more, work less, and create a life and business, you need both, that you love. I am joined by my co-host, partner in crime, Polish Peter. What's up, buddy?
Hey, I wouldn't say partner in crime. I don't want people thinking that I'm doing some kind of crime with you, man. You're on your own there, dude.
Okay. Whoever's watching this, I have no idea what he's talking about. Wrong guy. All right. Okay. All right. You can play your innocence now. That's fine.
That's right. Well, now, if it makes any sense, if you guys notice on this particular episode, when he's interviewed, I'm incognito. So,
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah. So this is actually, speaking of this interview, we got Stan Phelps on the line, and I could do an interview with Stan Phelps. So Stan is a guy, man, really prolific author, thinker. He has, as he talks about in the episode, like a ton of books, ton of knowledge, ton of things to share with us. In particular, in this one, we talk about something that's really, I think, really valuable and interesting, and an approach that not many people embrace, which is embracing your flaws, using that uniqueness to brand yourself, to make your business stand out from the crowd, and rise to a different level than your competition.
Yeah, I really love that, man, episode because of the fact that, you know, for a long time, me, myself, I was basically trying to resist my flaws, right? And the whole thing about being Polish, I was literally like not trying to make it known. And the minute I started embracing, and I think he mentions on this particular podcast about flaunting your flaws, that's when things start to change. So I really love this concept on how he actually talks about it. And we talked about his, Flawsome technique. And I love that, you know what? Listen towards the end. I think he talks about popsicle hotline. Pay attention to that because I think that's a perfect example of companies using this strategy to differentiate themselves and actually make things happen and grow as fast as they can possibly can.
Well, man, I did think about you and how you branded Polish Peter in your own kind of like, unique branding when you was talking about this. So without further ado, let's go in right now to my interview with Stan Phelps. Stan, what is up, my friend? Welcome to the Lifeonaire Show. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jason.
Well, man, I got to tell you, I feel honored, and I've had the chance to get to know you here over the last several years, and I've always looked at you as somebody who's an incredible kind of a thought leader, a generator of incredible ideas, and you share this stuff openly with people. And you actually decided to do this quite broadly with a series of books that you have published. Now, how many are you up to right now, by the way?
This week we just released the 16th in the series, but essentially there's 10 different colors.
And you're referring to the goldfish colors, and the goldfish is
the goldfish, exactly, yeah.
And if for those of you who are watching on YouTube right now, you can see in Stan's background, he has some of those books showing up in his picture as well. Man, I love this. And so you've really taken these different concepts and different niches of business success, distilled them into different kind of concepts, and then spread that out over your series. The one in particular we're going to talk about on this episode is this pink goldfish book that you co-wrote it with David Rendall?
Correct, yeah.
Yep, and so Dave's another guy here in the area, and I'll ask you more about him a little bit later. But tell me, what was the motivation behind this book to begin with?
Well, here's the thing. I met Dave going back about 6-7 years ago. And if you've never seen Dave, you'll never forget, because I know you know him, Jason, right? To have people get the image in their mind, he's about 6'7", and he wears head to toe pink. I mean, he stands out.
And not just like bold pink.
Yeah, he would tell you he's about 6'10" with heels on. What's funny is his wife Stephanie is 5'3".
That's great.
So he would tell you in their relationship, Jason, that that deodorant is way more important than breath mints. But Dave has got this amazing platform, and I know you know it. It's called Freak Factor. And Freak Factor is probably more about, as a leader or just personal development wise, that what makes us weak is also what makes us strong. And this is important. What makes us weird actually holds the key to what makes us wonderful. And so immediately when I saw Dave's message, and he's a fellow speaker and author, I started, because I'm more of a marketing guy, I started to see how this could be applied to branding, not only personal branding, but thinking about brand strategy for our products and services. And I've always believed this, that the idea that it's so important to try to stand out. And even though we know that in marketing, unfortunately, very few people are actually able to achieve that. And so differentiation is really at the heart of Pink Goldfish.
And so when you talk about differentiation, this is obviously, everybody in their mind or in those boardroom discussions, in their marketing, everyone's trying to differentiate, but it seems like, and you kind of allude to this in the book, like most people really aren't very good at it. Why do you think? Why is that?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, studies show that only about 3% of people have the capability to think outside, I would call it the bowl, but most people would call it the box, right? And where most people are confined by in that box are the norms, right? What we all consider as normal, whether it's societal or business or legal or whatever, we're confined by those norms. And so I think what great brands do is they either challenge those norms to figure out ways that they can either be a greater version of who they authentically are, or they purposefully decide to do less in some areas that everyone else just considers as normal. And I think part of the problem, and we've all done this, right? Jason, you probably have done this. What do we do when, especially we're new in a space, we start to benchmark who? We start to benchmark the leader. And unfortunately, because we start to look at the things that make the leader in our category successful, whether we know it or not, what do? We start to emulate those things. And that's just a road to sameness. That's not a road to standing out.
Okay. So basically, we're in an industry where, like, hey, they're doing really well. Let's do what they're doing. And then all of a sudden you become a copycat, a knockoff, and then you just totally lose all your differentiation. One of the things you talked about that was really intriguing to me, and you talked about kind of flaunting your flaws and the Flawsome, the term that you guys referred to. I found myself kind of, when I first read that, get almost a little resistant to accepting that, because I felt like, wow, like I've always been taught, like, you work on what you're not good at. But you kind of made a case that, your flaws can be an actual, like a positive attribute in the differentiation process of your business. Tell us, how does that work? And, like, how are we defining a flaw? Like, what do flaws mean?
Yeah, so the best way to describe it is, again, there's kind of these norms that everyone subscribes to the industry or even personally, right? As we think about our peers, there are things that we all determine are quote unquote normal. Now, there are things about us, Jason, that are unique to us, things that make us weird, or maybe even things that make us weak, but definitely things that we bring to the table that are unique to us as individuals. And here's why how-to books will never go out of print, is because it's hard to change who we inherently are, right? It's almost impossible to change who you are. And so what we subscribe to in the Pink Goldfish is, again, this idea that every weakness, right, has a corresponding strength. And in the book, we have got a great assessment for that. But the idea is that instead of trying to improve and change who you are, what we're advocating is, why don't you just embrace who you already are and become a better version of yourself?
I got it. So I can totally see how that works with an individual. Like, so for instance, like, you're really tall as well, right? You and Dave are both tall. Yep. That's a unique characteristic of you. Conversely, for instance, I could see somebody who's really short and stocky. Like, maybe they want to be a basketball player, but it's not in the cards genetically, and so they decide to try powerlifting, and they find out what they considered a weakness, being shorter and stockier, is a huge advantage in this sport, for instance.
Right.
How does this apply to a business? Like, what are some and by the way, let me back up for a second. I want to overcome an objection here that people may be thinking. Someone may be wondering, okay, well, if I'm looking at somebody and they're doing really well and they're considered normal, is it because this works and this is a best practice, or is that not true? Is that maybe it just works for them, but it's not going to work for you?
Right. I mean, I think, and that, again, I think part of the problem is that we fall into the trap of benchmarking and playing the game of follow the leader. And when the leader is driving 80 miles per hour and you're trying to pass them going 85 or 90, it's super hard to stand out. And I'll share this with you because I think it's an interesting, we have a matrix in the book, and it's called the Flawsome matrix or the flaunting matrix. And it's this idea here that if you can look over here at the top is what makes you weird, at the bottom is what makes you normal. You can either do more or you can do less. So there's 4 animals associated with all 4. I'll give you the real quick one. The cow is what we call doing less of what makes you unique or weird, right? Cows, their spots make them unique. They're like our fingerprints. No 2 cows are alike.
I never knew that.
But do cows know that they're unique, Jason?
I don't think so.
No, they're oblivious to the fact that they're unique. In fact, one cow would walk here, and what would the rest of the cows do? Follow right along, right, and create a cow path. Now, the opposite of that, and this is what we talk about, is the idea of doing more of what makes you unique. We call that the strut or the peacock quadrant. So you're going to see a theme here. The feathers of a peacock are exactly like the spots of a cow. What's the difference?
They
what is
they flaunt it. They fly their feathers out. Yeah, they do the spread.
What does a peacock do? They're not afraid to put it out there, right?
Yeah, yep.
They own it, right? They own it, and they're not afraid to actually show those feathers, right? That's the difference. Now, on the bottom right here, this is the idea of doing more of what everyone else considers as normal. And we call that the match or the zebra quadrant. So here's the thing. The stripes on a zebra are exactly like the feathers on a peacock or the spots on a cow. No 2 zebras are alike. But have you ever been able to tell one zebra from another zebra, Jason?
I have not.
It's even if you added more stripes, right?
Yeah.
Once everybody starts to have the same type of pattern of stripes, it's hard to stand out. And so simply matching is not a way to stand out. In fact, this is interesting. Zebras will huddle in groups of 4 to 5 as a prey defense. See, when a lion sees 4 or 5 zebras, they don't see 4 or 5 zebras. They see one really big zebra, right? So the 4th quadrant is the opposite of doing more of what everyone else does as normal. It's purposely doing less. And we call this the subtract or the polar bear quadrant. So trivia question for you. What color are polar bears, Jason?
Off-white?
No, the polar bears are black. By the way, zebras are black as well. Zebras are black with white stripes. But polar bears are black, and the reason why we see them as white or kind of an off yellowish white, is that their fur is hollow. So the light passes through their fur and essentially gets captured. And what happens is every color in the spectrum kind of gets removed, and what gets reflected back to us is the absence of color, or white. I know you have a little one because who's what, a year and a half now?
2, yeah.
2, oh my God, 2.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen her play with paint? What happens when you put all of the colors together?
Oh yeah, black.
Black, right? So this is the opposite. This is consciously doing less of what everyone else considers as normal. Great example of this, Chick-fil-A, right? Every other fast food company is open on Sunday. Chick-fil-A actually does more business than McDonald's, KFC, and Taco Bell like combined, the average unit. And they do it by being open, what, 6 days a week. So it's simply the idea, this whole concept is the idea that your flaws, right, either the things that inherently make you different, or that polar bear type of strategy, things that you purposefully do not to be like everyone else, an intentional flaw, are the things that can make you awesome, or as we say in the book, the things that make you flawsome, right? And so the reason why this is an acronym is that Dave and I, we studied it's now over 300 brands as part of a crowdsourcing project. And there's 7 ways that you can do it. And they all tie into those 7 letters of Flawsome.
Man, that's really, really cool. Tell me, when you mentioned just now, these can be it's either something that's kind of inherent to you, something unique about you, or it could be, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it could be manufactured. Like maybe you see where everybody is the same, and then you choose a diametrically opposed viewpoint, stance, positioning. So are both of those valid? And do you see one being better than the other?
Absolutely. So 2 of the strategies in the Flawsome framework are, 1, lopsiding. So lopsiding is a strategy of doubling or tripling down. It's like the Peacock. The stuff that already makes you unique, try to do more of that, right? Own it, embrace it. The other strategy that we call in the book, it's called opposing. So great example, if you were going to run an online dating site, right? Typically the success metric is what? We match people better together, or we create more marriages. Well, sometimes if you do the opposite of that, you can also be successful, right? Instead of finding Mr. or Mrs. Right, you could take the route that Tinder does. Find Mr. or Mrs. right now, right? It doesn't have to last forever. It may just last for one night. So yeah, that's an opposing type of strategy. Again, when everyone starts to go towards what's normal, some brands will go in the exact opposite direction. That's a pretty courageous way of doing this. In fact, probably out of the 7, it's the one that's the strongest.
Is this kind of maybe a high risk, high reward kind of thing, or it might work, it might not?
Yeah, it can. One of our favorite examples is, if you think about it, if you're in the floral business, right? So flowers, how would you compete, right? We have a better selection, like our flowers are fresher, we deliver them faster, right? That's how most people would compete. There's a company out there that's called Dirty, Rotten Flowers. And so, if we talk about, if you have a not so loved one, right, that you want to send something to, so that's an example of like going the exact opposite direction. You know, another one we talk about is, do you remember when the movie Super Size Me came out?
Yeah.
All right, Morgan Spurlock, if you're not familiar, ate McDonald's breakfast, lunch, and dinner for an entire month. And what did he find out, Jason?
Probably wasn't the smartest thing health-wise.
No, it was not. But look, we all knew that eating fast food is not good for you, right? But what did McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's do? You know, McDonald's got rid of Super Size Me, but what did they start to offer after that movie came out?
Better options.
Salads, right? Fruit, water. There's one company, though, that went in almost the exact opposite direction. In fact, lopsided, that's another strategy, lopsided the fact that they were unhealthy. And at the time, they were actually closing stores because they were unsuccessful, because they were a jack of all trades. They created the thick burger, and I'm talking about Hardee's, or if you're on the West Coast, Carl's Jr.
Yeah, I love me some Hardee's, no kidding.
They didn't go the healthy route, right? They decided to make the food bigger and if this is a word, unhealthier, right? Which is a great example, again, of what we call of lopsiding. And I love this is a picture right here of what's called the Great American Thick Burger, right? It's got a hot dog up here, about a half a pound of meat, and I love this. Potato chips. As if you're too lazy to physically pick up each potato chip. You know, they want to make it a little easier for you.
Put it all in one.
And so for those of you listening, Jason and I are in North Carolina, so the biggest pork producing state in the country. They did something, Jason, a couple years ago that truly warmed my heart. It's called the APORKALYPSE, right? No part of the pig left behind. When basically a company starts to tell you and use phraseology that's like the end of the world is coming when you eat something, that's probably not a good thing. Another rule when you market stuff in food is you never use black. You'll never see someone use black but what did they do? They did the opposite. They lopsided. And I love this. They offer it in, you know, a burrito or a biscuit. So you could see somebody in there. Do you have that in a wrap? You know, I really want to.
I want to cut calories on this.
Yeah. I'm going to get that in a wrap. You know, do you have that in a wrap? So, so great example. But the idea is that, look, you know, none of us, perfection is boring. It's the imperfect that makes us interesting. And instead of trying to like hide those flaws, what we advocate is that you actually shine a light on them, own them, and actually illuminate them to bring them to life.
So in some ways, like we're looking for things that are countercultural, counterintuitive. Tell me where somebody, like say a business owner is hearing this right now, and they're wondering, okay, but like what are some of the steps that somebody can take to begin looking down this road for those flaws, for those differentiation factors? You know, as you're speaking, I was kind of thinking, this is interesting because, and you mentioned earlier about it could be something, you know, unique to yourself, or it could be something to your industry and seeing what others are doing. So in a way, it seems like it could be internally motivated based on, you know, you doing a self-analysis, or externally motivated based on what the competition is doing. What are some of the advices that you give people for starting this journey, like starting to look for where they could find these?
Yeah, great point. So in the book, the book's like in 3 sections. One, we make the case why it's important to be different. I mean, I think we all know that at a level that it's important to stand out, but we make the case for it. The middle part of the book is really all of the examples around this Flawsome 7 ways that you can do it. The third part of the book is the how. And so the how is simply this. It's 4 steps, Jason. We call it the 4 A's. And you hit it nail on the head. It all starts with what? Starts with awareness. Because sometimes we can't see what makes us unique. There's a great saying here in the South. I'm sure you've heard this before. And I moved here 8 years ago, so I'd never heard this before. But the saying, the Southern proverb goes like this: you can't see the label when you're sitting inside the jar, right? So what do we need to do as part of awareness? Not only do we have an assessment in the book, but we also say, hey, talk to your customers, right? Duh. Why do they do business with you? How do they see you as different? Talk to your employees, right? Because many of them might have worked for a competitor. They have a certain reason how they see you as different. But here's the key one that most people miss. We tell people, talk to your suppliers, right? Who do your suppliers do business with, Jason? Right. They do business with your competition.
Yeah.
So they have a unique insight of seeing not only what makes you different, but what everyone else in the industry, right? So it's a matter of, reaching out, finding that feedback of what makes you stand out. And then here's a critical thing, is once you find that out, and you've got to wrap your arms around it, and you've got to accept it, right? You got to accept the warts, and you got to accept the imperfection. Because again, it's not about imperfection. It's about understanding the things that are important to your customers and then trying to overemphasize those things, especially if they're things that make you unique. And once you accept it, the third step is simply this, what we call align or alignment. So, Jason, you tell me what's different about Lifeonaire, but here's the deal. If I go on the Lifeonaire website, am I seeing that differentiation? Is that coming across? If I go to a Lifeonaire event, virtual or in person, am I feeling that differentiation, right? Or any material that I look at, right? It needs to align with that. And once you aligned, you can do, I think, the most fun thing. If you do that groundwork, the fourth A is called amplification.
Turn it up.
Now, here's the thing. Amplification works two ways, right? The Peacock version is what? Turning it all the way up to what? What number do we want to turn it up to, Jason?
11.
11, right? And if you're not familiar with Spinal Tap, there's this genius scene in the movie where he talks about their amplifiers go up to 11. But here's the thing. The second thing, which most people don't realize, is in some areas you have to purposefully turn the volume down to 0. And this is a key thing. Business is about making decisions. You can't please everyone, and you can't be great at everything. And in order to free up resources, Jason, to focus on the stuff that truly differentiates you, that your customers appreciate, you got to get those resources from somewhere. And so a lot of times that comes from dialing it down to 0 in other places. So I'll give you an example of this. I used to be on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and probably another 3 that I've already forgotten, right? I was never great at any of those platforms. Why? Because I was spreading myself thin. Now today, everything I do is only focused on one platform. And I double and triple down on that. For me, everyone has a different thing, but for me, as a thought leader, author, and speaker, LinkedIn is my platform.
Man, so one thing that struck me as you're speaking that we haven't really talked about yet is whether we're talking about embracing your flaws, setting yourself apart, doing things counterintuitively, or you just mentioned acceptance and amplification. one thing that seems to me that a lot of business owners may be struggling with is fear. Like, I'm afraid to do this, right? Because this is, I mean, I think maybe, I don't know if it's human evolution or wiring or whatever you want to talk about, social conditioning. You know, we like to kind of stay within this narrowly defined kind of norm. What do you, how do you work with business owners to help them pass that fear of being so different?
Right. So, for example, if I was working with anyone, and here's the thing, the more established that you are in business and people already know you as X, the harder it is to do some of the more, drastic strategies. Like opposing is a drastic strategy. Lopsiding, like tripling down on something, is drastic. So what we talk about, especially if you're already established, is first you have to understand that that's just human nature. That if you deviate, there are always going to be external pressures to try to bring you back and conform. Right? So you have to understand that's just how people are. And in fact, if what you do pisses some people off, that's the greatest indication that you're probably onto something. If you do stuff and no one resonates with it or tells you you're doing something wrong, then you're probably not all that effective. So one of the things we talk about in the M in Flawsome is what we call microweirding. And so what we advocate is start small and start doing small little things. Microweirding is really about the client or customer experience. And so it's how can you do a little bit more of what makes you unique, or purposefully do a little less than what everyone else considers as normal, right? So, one of the fun examples of this in the book, we talk about a place called the Magic Castle Hotel, right? So they're a hotel in California. They're like every other 3-star hotel in California, except they have 3,500 5-star reviews on TripAdvisor. They're the most reviewed hotel on all of TripAdvisor. And it's because they do a lot of small things, Jason, that allow them to stand out. One is they don't have a mini bar in the room, right? Do you get bummed out that you can't buy a $7 soda, right?
Yeah, end of the world.
Here's what they do at the Magic Castle. You want a candy bar or a soda, you go down to the front desk and they actually will give it to you for free. Think people appreciate that?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And so they do a little less, and now they don't have to stock the mini bar. They don't feel like they're gouging their customers. But this is my favorite. Just like every other hotel in Southern California, I think by law, you have to have a pool, right? Because it's Southern California, where their pool has one thing that's a little different. And I want to share a picture of this because it's classic. Their pool has a thing called the popsicle hotline. So you're getting a little warm, you're sitting poolside, you go over, you pick up the phone, you don't even have to dial. You tell them what flavors you want, and within 1 minute, on a silver tray with white gloves, they deliver you your popsicles poolside. Do you think that little thing that they do gets people talking about their experience?
Yeah, man.
And this is the point of this. If you are the same and like everyone else, you are what? You're boring, right? We don't talk about boring. What do we talk about? We talk about things that are different, right? Things that stand out. You only have to look on the internet. Things that are weird, right, are the things that we're attracted to. It's, again, what I would love to do is, if for people listening to this, look, hey, you're a small business, and I remember being accused of this. When I'm small, as a business owner? I'm an independent entrepreneur. What am I more apt to do? When you look at my website, what am I going to try to do? I'm going to try to project myself as what? Bigger than who I am, because I view being small as a quote unquote weakness. But here's the thing. It's not a weakness. When people deal with me as a company, who do they deal with? Me personally. I have the ability to be nimble and responsive to my clients' needs, and they appreciate that. The irony, what do big businesses try to do when they portray themselves? They try to portray themselves as small, which is crazy. I mean, you should never apologize for being big. That means you're proven, right? That means you're established. That means you're trustworthy, right? Own it, right? So that's the challenge. Accept who you are, be a better version of who you are, or consciously decide things that don't matter that everyone else does without questioning it. That's the heart of the pink goldfish.
God, man, this is awesome. Thank you so much, Stan, for this. How do people learn more about you? Pink Goldfish, I'm assuming, is on Amazon. Tell people where they can learn more.
Yeah, certainly. So if they want to go on to Amazon, really proud of the book. In fact, my co-author and I are working on the 2.0 of this right now. But this book is just over 2 years old. It's fantastic. So Amazon, if you're interested about me, stanphelpsspeaks.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where, I lopside. I try to eat my own dog food, Jason. I spend the majority of my time. Connect with me on LinkedIn.
Stan Phelps, thank you so much, my friend. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Cool interview, man. That was really, really cool. I enjoyed that a lot. As I mentioned in the interview, when Stan started talking about your flaws at first, I think I kind of it reacted in me in a way that I don't think was super positive until I really understood what he was talking about. What I took from that is there are things about us, all of us, whether we're talking personally or in business, that are different than the norms, that make us unique, that make us special. Oftentimes, those things can be looked at as a negative, but there's a way to differentiate yourself to actually leverage it to your advantage. And you mentioned earlier on, you're being Polish, right? And you've actually embraced this to a new level of being Polish Peter.
Yeah, I mean, I took it to a whole nother level. I think some people might be thinking, what's up with that guy?
Now, there's probably a lot of Polish people too who are not happy that you've done this, but that's okay.
Yeah. No, but listen, I love this episode because he talks about embracing those things. And guess what? When you start embracing those things, life, business, and a whole bunch of other stuff becomes a lot simpler. You don't, if you don't feel like you're resisting anything, you actually seems like he talks about embracing it, right? He talks about really taking it in. And if you look at some of those companies that have done that and people who have done that, they're start to grow. And they are coming out, like use Chick-fil-A, for instance, right? Great example of a company that embraced who they truly are. And look at the following. I mean, have you ever seen Chick-fil-A not have any cars in the driveway? I haven't, right? So it's a very powerful, I think, strategy. Not strategy, I think more of like...
Well, I think it's almost a maturational... It's a maturation and an embracing of who you are. And like you said, like you're not swimming upstream anymore. You're going with the authentic version of yourself. Like you're not trying to be somebody you're not. You're not trying to represent your business in something that it's not. This is something, for instance, in business, a lot of people, common business practice has you tells you, hey, pretend your business is really big and it's not just you, and you have several fake emails made up to make it just to make it sound like, oh, I got a customer service person. No, just if it's just you, maybe consider just being truthful and being honest with who you are and embracing that and pivoting and positioning yourself as a boutique business as a mom and pop. Like there's just being authentic with who you are. After the interview, he was talking with me a little bit more, and he was basically saying, some of the places you can look for this, and we talked about this a little bit in the interview, is look at your internal and external situation, as well as even potentially consider getting the opinion of other people. Like, what do they see in you? What do they think of when they think of you or your brand or your company? That may give you some clues towards this. Another place to look is some of the sacred cows of your industry. What are the things that everybody thinks you have to do it this way? Look at those things. And the other thing, as I mentioned, and I mentioned to him on the interview as well, I said, fear could be something that's really inhibiting people from doing this, from embracing this. And he said, man, you don't have to go into the deep end of the pool. You don't have to jump in both feet first. You can go small. Take small steps. Like, just take small steps, whatever you're comfortable with, and see how it goes. Like, just take a slight angle. You don't have to reverse everything 180 degrees. Just take a slight shift in your trajectory and see what happens. For those of you who are scared or hesitant or skeptical as to the effects this could have on your business.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. And as I was listening to it, a whole bunch of different ideas came into my head. I mean, you talk about emulating the leader, and how sometimes it's insane for us to emulate a leader because we're nowhere near there. That was kind of hit me because, as you know, I mean, the leader that I emulate is Tony Robbins, right? And to get to, I could go crazy trying to emulate him. But if I just start looking at from a different perspective, like who I really am, and start growing into that, all of a sudden becomes a lot easier.
Well, we were just talking about this the other day, since we're on this topic of transparency and stuff, you and I were talking about, so for those of you who aren't aware, Lifeonaire has a couple events. We have our Get a Life Getaway, and we have our Business Builder Workshop. And we were talking about, like, hey, how do we get the word out about these events? Because they're incredible, lives are changed, we have glowing testimonials, people just rant and rave about them. And I pulled up Tony Robbins' website, and I said, hey, this is how he's built, marketing his events. There's hardly any explanation of the event. Someone probably can't get a good grasp from the website of what this is about. And you're like, well, dude, he's Tony Robbins. People don't know about the Lifeonaire stuff, so we have to tell people more about it. So our copy, the copy is just the words we use on the page to describe the event, has to be more detailed and explain more. And that was a great example too. Like, stop trying to copy other people if you're in a different position, if you have a different scenario that you yourself can embrace more fully.
Right. That's a great example. And by the way, I mean, if you're going with that, I would totally just change the face of the person who's doing, like, I don't know, maybe do some Photoshop over there on you. I don't know. Is your unique thing like have no hair? What is it? Are you the cow from this, or you a peacock, or zebra, or the polar bear? Which one are you there?
I'm a combination of all of them.
Oh boy. I'm
a striped bear with feathers.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, we hope you've enjoyed this episode. I seriously got a lot out of it. I think it was an excellent share by Stan, and I'm glad we had a chance to speak with him. I encourage you to learn more about him, pick up his book. Also, of course, as always, if you're a regular listener to the Lifeonaire Show, which I hope you are, we would love to hear from you. Please leave us a review, subscribe, let us know what you would like to hear on. If you have any people that you think would be awesome guests, we'd love to hear from you as well. And this helps us reach more people and have better content and deliver a life-changing message to a broader audience. So we would love for that to happen. Also, if you want to be part of the conversation and join the Lifeonaire community, head on over to the free Lifeonaire app. This is something you can download for Apple or Android, or go to lifeonaire.com for the desktop version. This is a lot of conversations, discussions, a lot of masterminding, brainstorming, support, encouragement, and a lot of other awesome things going on. So if social media is burning you out and you're ready for something positive and encouraging and uplifting and helpful, head on over to the Lifeonaire app right now. And as always, thank you for listening. We will see you next week on the Lifeonaire Show. And until then, live free and with abundance. See you next time, everyone.